The clock on the wall of Tony's Pizza ticked past midnight, its hands crawling toward 12:30. The shop should have been closed an hour ago, but the oven still glowed faintly red, radiating the warmth of the day's last pies. Grease clung to the air, heavy with the smell of pepperoni and burnt cheese, and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the back was the only sound filling the silence. Ethan Miller wiped his flour-dusted hands on his apron and leaned against the counter. His back ached from 10 hours of deliveries, zigzagging across the sleepy little town of Ashwood, Pennsylvania. It wasn't a big town, just one of those places with 2 traffic lights, a main street, and endless stretches of woods that seemed to swallow everything around it. Ethan was 19, a college freshman trying to make enough money to cover textbooks and gas. Delivering pizzas wasn't glamorous, but the tips usually kept him afloat. Tonight, though, tips had been lousy. 3 deliveries, 1 stiff, and too many hours wasted waiting around. His manager, Tom, was in the back counting receipts, muttering to himself. Ethan was halfway through tying off the trash bag when the shrill ring of the shop's landline sliced through the quiet. Both of them froze. The phone never rang this late. Ethan glanced toward the back, but Tom didn't move. He just hollered, "You get it." Ethan sighed, set the trash down, and picked up the receiver. Tony's Pizza. We're technically closed. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, a voice, low, raspy. Male, 5 large pepperoni, extra cheese. Ethan frowned. The voice was strange, drawn out, almost like a whisper pressed through broken lungs. "Sir, we're closing up. The ovens are already shut down." Another pause. Then, harsher, 5 large pepperoni, extra cheese. The way the man said it made Ethan's skin crawl. Something in the tone didn't sound right, like the words were being forced out, dragged through something rotten. He lowered the receiver, covering the mouthpiece. "Tom, it's some guy ordering 5 larges, says extra cheese." I told him we're closed. From the back, Tom poked his head out. His glasses hung crookedly on his nose. 5? That's almost $70 right there. You kidding me? Take it. I'll keep the ovens running. You could use the tips, right? Ethan hesitated. He wanted to argue, to say this wasn't worth it. But Tom was already firing the ovens back up, shoving pepperoni bags onto the counter. Reluctantly, Ethan lifted the phone again. "All right. What's the address?" The voice gave it slowly. 1275 Hollow Creek Road. Ethan blinked. He knew that road. Everyone in town did. It wasn't even really a road more, like a dirt track cutting through endless miles of woods. The houses out there were old, forgotten. People said Hollow Creek was cursed. Teens drove out there to drink and scare each other with ghost stories. "Got it," Ethan muttered. "Delivery might take a while. That's way out of town." The line clicked dead. No goodbye. An hour later, Ethan was strapping the insulated bag to the back of his beat-up Honda motorcycle. The pizzas steamed inside, their smell almost comforting against the unease gnawing at his stomach. Tom handed him the receipt. "Big order like that. Guy'll tip you at least 20. Don't come back empty-handed." Ethan forced a weak grin, though his gut told him the opposite. The streets of Ashwood were nearly empty as he rolled out of town. The only neon still burning was from a 24-hour gas station and the buzzing sign of a closed laundromat. Past Main Street, the glow of town vanished entirely, swallowed by the looming trees. The road narrowed, cracked pavement giving way to gravel, then dirt. The further he rode, the darker it became. His headlights stretched ahead like a fragile lifeline, beyond it nothing. No moon, no stars, just the suffocating shroud of the woods pressing in from all sides. The deeper he went, the more wrong it felt. The forest wasn't just silent, it was dead. No crickets, no owls, not even the rustle of wind. Only the growl of his engine and the crunch of tires on dirt. Every so often, Ethan swore he saw movement at the edge of his light, a shape, a flicker gone when he blinked. He shook his head. Just shadows, he whispered to himself. Just tired. After what felt like forever, a mailbox loomed out of the dark. The numbers were barely visible in his beam. 1275. The house stood back from the road, crouched behind a wall of trees. Its roof sagged, shingles missing, siding peeled. The windows were black hollows. A porch slanted downward like it was sinking into the earth. No lights, no signs of life. Ethan slowed to a stop, his heart hammering. He fumbled his phone from his pocket, thumbed Tom's number. Ring, ring, no answer. Again, voicemail. He cursed under his breath. He could leave, take the pizzas back. But Tom would chew him out, maybe dock his pay. For a long moment he sat there, engine idling, staring at the house. Every instinct screamed, don't go in. Then a light flickered on inside. Just one, faint and yellow, in a window near the front door. Ethan swallowed hard. Guess someone's home. He killed the engine. The sudden silence pressed against him, almost physical. Slinging the pizza bag over his shoulder, he walked up the creaking steps. Each board groaned beneath his boots. At the door, he reached for the bell. The button was cracked, rusted, but when he pressed it, a hollow chime echoed inside. Pizza delivery, he called, voice wavering. No answer. He waited, listened. Somewhere inside, faintly, came the sound of footsteps, slow, dragging, coming closer. His pulse quickened. The footsteps stopped. The door handle rattled then. With a drawn-out creak, the door swung inward. But no one stood there. Only the dim hallway stretched ahead, lined with peeling wallpaper. The smell of mildew and something sour drifted out. Ethan hesitated on the porch, every nerve in his body screaming to run. But behind him was the dark forest. Ahead, at least, was light. Petus. He called again. Silence. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, shadows clinging to the corners. A single bulb flickered above, buzzing faintly. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, revealing mold-blackened plaster. Hello? Ethan tried again. His voice sounded too loud, swallowed almost immediately by the silence. Then he saw it at the far end of the hallway. In the glow of the weak bulb, sat a wooden chair, and in that chair a boy, no older than 8, his face pale, eyes wide, fixed directly on Ethan. The boy didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. Ethan forced a shaky laugh. Hey buddy, got your pizzas? Where's your dad? The boy didn't answer. Instead, his lips twitched, pulled back, slowly forming a smile, and then he laughed. A high broken sound that didn't belong to a child at all. The boy's laughter didn't stop. It echoed through the hallway, a hollow, uneven sound that seemed to scrape against Ethan's eardrums. Ethan clutched the pizza bag tighter against his chest, his pulse thundering. This isn't funny, kid, he said, his voice quivering. Where are your parents? The boy's smile widened. His teeth looked too sharp in the dim light, too small and crowded in his mouth. Then just as suddenly as it began, the laughter cut off. The boy tilted his head slowly, unnaturally far to one side, until it seemed like his neck would snap. His wide eyes never blinked, never left Ethan's face. Ethan took a step back. The floorboard groaned beneath his boot. I'm leaving, he whispered. Tell your dad to call the shop if he wants his food. He turned toward the door. It was shut. He didn't remember shutting it. Okay, Ethan muttered to himself, his voice too loud in the silence. That's fine. Just go out the way you came in. Simple. He reached for the knob. Cold metal bit into his palm. He twisted. It wouldn't budge. Locked panic clawed at his chest. Behind him, something scuttled across the hallway floor. He whipped around. The boy was gone. The chair sat empty, rocking slightly as if someone had just stood from it. Ethan's throat went dry. He scanned the shadows, the peeling wallpaper, the cracked ceiling. Hello. The only reply was the faint hum of the flickering bulb above, then dash softly. Almost too soft to notice, he heard whispering. A chorus of tiny voices, like children playing hide and seek. Their words overlapped, impossible to understand. But the tone was unmistakable, gleeful, taunting. The whispers seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the walls, from the ceiling, from right behind his ear. Ethan stumbled backward, his shoulder knocking against the wall. The wallpaper peeled beneath his touch, flaking away to reveal a black, wet surface beneath. He pulled his hand back instinctively and saw something dark smear across his skin. Sticky. Cold. Blood. No. 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 Ethan whispered, scrubbing his palm against his jeans. This isn't happening. He needed to get out. Now. Clutching the pizzas, he bolted down the hall, past the rocking chair, toward a doorway at the end. If the front door was locked, maybe there was a back. Maybe as he neared the doorway, a low humming filled the air, a lullaby, familiar and wrong. The tune wavered, distorted, like a mother singing softly to her children through a broken radio. The sound was coming from the room ahead. Ethan skidded to a stop, his sneakers squealing on the warped floorboards. He didn't want to look, didn't want to see what waited beyond that threshold. But his body betrayed him, his eyes pulling toward the dark crack of the open door. Inside, a faint blue light flickered the glow of a television set. The screen flashed static, buzzing faintly. Shadows shifted in its glow. Two figures sat cross-legged on the floor, facing the TV. Small, motionless. Children, their long tangled hair draped over their faces, their heads tilted slightly in unison, as though they'd been waiting for him all along. Jesus Christ, Ethan breathed, stepping back. The girls turned. Their hair fell away, revealing faces pale as wax, eyes white and gleaming in the glow of static. Their mouths opened, wide, impossibly wide, stretching into jagged, broken grins. And then they began to laugh. The sound wasn't human. It was shrill, warped, 1,000 children's voices tearing out of their throats at once. Ethan dropped the pizza bag. The cardboard boxes spilled open across the floor, cheese and sauce steaming into the mildew-stinking air. He stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. His breath came in ragged gasps, his legs refusing to move. The children pointed, both of them. Their small fingers rose slowly, in perfect sync, not at him, behind him. Ethan's body went rigid. He didn't want to turn. He didn't want to know. But something compelled him, dragging his head around inch by inch. Standing in the hallway, half hidden in the shadows, was a woman. Her dress was torn, blackened with rot. Her hair hung in matted strands over her shoulders. Her skin was gray, sagging, her jaw hanging slightly open, as if broken. But it was her eyes that froze Ethan where he stood, two burning pools of red, glowing in the dark. The lullaby swelled, filling the air, drowning his heartbeat. The woman raised a hand, long, cracked nails curled, toward him. Ethan finally found his voice. He screamed. Ethan's scream tore through the hallway, echoing against the rotting walls. The woman didn't flinch. She only stood there, hand raised, nails curved like claws, her head tilting slowly, curiously, like a predator studying prey. Ethan's legs finally obeyed. He bolted, sprinting down the hallway, his shoes slamming against warped wood. His shoulder clipped the rocking chair. It toppled with a crash, clattering against the floor. Behind him came the sound of movement, a dragging shuffle, steady, deliberate. The woman wasn't rushing. She didn't need to. The front door. If he could just get it open, he slammed into it with his shoulder, rattling the frame. The knob refused to turn. Locked. Again, he twisted. Harder, yanking until his palm burned. Come on. Come on. Something cold brushed the back of his neck. Ethan spun, slamming himself against the door. The hallway was empty. No woman, no children. Just the flickering bulb, buzzing faintly above. But the air was colder now. His breath puffed white in front of him. He swallowed hard, forcing his shaking hands to pull his phone from his pocket. The screen glowed, showing bars of signal 1, weak, but there. He swiped for Tom's number with trembling fingers. "Pick up, please, pick up." The line rang once, twice, then a click. But instead of Tom's voice, Ethan heard breathing, heavy, wet, too close. He jerked the phone away from his ear, yet the sound was still there. From the receiver? From the hallway? From right behind him? The phone buzzed violently in his hand, then went dead. Screen black dot. Ethan dropped it. The clatter echoed like a gunshot, and then the lullaby began again, soft, sweet, coming from the stairwell at the end of the hall. Against his will, Ethan's eyes drifted toward it. A staircase rose into the shadows above, the wooden steps sagging, carpet worn thin. The lullaby floated down from the darkness, each note sour and cracked, like a voice carried from beneath the earth. "No," Ethan whispered. "No way I'm going up there." But his feet moved anyway. One step, then another. The stairs groaned, threatening to collapse beneath his weight. He gripped the rail, the wood soft and damp under his fingers. Halfway up, he heard it, tiny feet pattering above, quick, light, running. The lullaby stopped. Silence pressed in, and then, from the top of the stairs, something leaned forward. Two small hands gripped the banister. A face peered over. It was one of the girls from the TV room. Her hair dangled toward the floor, her mouth stretching into that same broken grin. Her voice rasped, doubled, like two tones speaking at once. "Don't leave us." Ethan stumbled back, nearly tumbling down the steps. He bolted sideways into the nearest door, slamming it shut behind him. The room was small, suffocating. Dust and mold thickened the air. The only light came from the window, cracked and smeared with grime. Outside, the woods loomed, endless black, stretching forever. He rushed to the window, fumbling with the latch. It screeched as he forced it upward. The cold night air hit his face like water. Salvation. He could climb out, drop to the ground, run. But as he shoved his leg over the sill, he froze. In the glass, in the faint reflection, stood the woman, right behind him. Her red eyes blazed in the pain. Ethan whipped around the empty room. His chest heaved, his throat raw from sucking in air. "I'm losing my mind." The floor creaked, not beneath him. Outside the door, slow, dragging, steps, pausing between each one, coming closer. The knob rattled. Turned. Ethan threw his weight against the door, holding it shut. The wood trembled under pressure from the other side, something pushing harder, harder. The hinges groaned, and then it stopped. Silence. Ethan pressed his ear against the door, listening. Nothing, no footsteps. Then a whisper, so close it might have been inside the room with him. "Ethan," he recoiled, stumbling into the middle of the room. His heart hammered, pounding against his ribs, so hard it hurt. The whisper came again, stretched into a hiss. "Ethan," his stomach dropped. They knew his name. The bulb overhead flickered, buzzed, died. Darkness swallowed him whole, and in the dark, he heard them. The children, giggles, circling him, running just out of reach. The woman, breathing, ragged and wet, closer, closer. Ethan's hand brushed the window. He gripped the frame, yanked himself up, and dove through. Glass shattered, slicing his arms as he tumbled into the cold dirt outside. He landed hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. For a moment, he lay there, chest heaving, the taste of blood and dust in his mouth. Then he heard it, from the porch, the creak of the front door opening. He looked up, wiping glass from his face. The woman stood in the doorway, her figure framed by the flickering light inside, and on either side of her, 3 children, all staring at him, smiling. Ethan didn't wait. The instant he saw them, the woman framed in the doorway, The children smiling beside her, he staggered to his feet and ran. Branches whipped against his arms as he plunged into the woods. Dry leaves crunched loud underfoot, every sound announcing his panic to the night. The darkness between the trees seemed alive, shifting, closing in. His lungs burned, but he didn't stop. He didn't dare. Behind him came the sound of laughter. Not one child, not too many. The echoes bounced between the trees, high-pitched and shrill, until he couldn't tell how many voices chased him or where they were coming from. "Leave me alone," he screamed into the forest. No reply, just laughter. Then dash, snap, a branch broke directly to his left. Ethan froze, turning toward the sound. His pulse roared in his ears, drowning everything else. Silence. Then a whisper, clear as if spoken at his shoulder. "So hungry." He bolted again. Through the trees, he spotted the faint metallic glint of his scooter. Relief surged through him, like fire in his veins. He crashed into the clearing, fumbling for his keys with shaking hands. The scooter loomed like salvation. Its familiar shape grounded him, something real, something human. He jammed the key into the ignition, twisting hard. The engine coughed, stuttered, refused to start. No, come on, don't do this to me now." He tried again. Nothing, just a pitiful whine. The giggles grew louder, circling the clearing. Leaves rustled, branches bent, shapes moved between the trees, small figures darting, too quick to see clearly. Ethan's breath came in sharp bursts. He gripped the handlebars tighter, praying, begging for the scooter to come alive, and then dash footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Not the children this time. He looked up across the clearing. Between two massive pines, the woman stepped forward. The shadows clung to her like a second skin, peeling away only as she moved closer. Her red eyes glowed faintly, her pale hands outstretched. She didn't walk, she glided. Ethan kicked the scooter in frustration. The engine sputtered weakly, then went dead again. He cursed, scrambling off it, his eyes darting for escape. The forest stretched in every direction, an endless maze. Which way led back to town? Which way led deeper into hell? He didn't have time to think. He just ran. The children followed. Their laughter snapped and cracked like twigs breaking, darting from tree to tree. He caught glimpses of them, white faces flashing in the dark, hands brushing against bark, eyes gleaming like animal eyes in headlights. They didn't chase in straight lines. They circled, herded him, drove him where they wanted him to go. And Ethan realized, with a sick drop in his stomach, they weren't trying to catch him, they were leading him. He stumbled into another clearing, this one wider, littered with fallen branches, and a giant oak rising from the center. Its trunk was massive, scarred with carvings, shapes, symbols, names etched deep into the bark. Some fresh, some so old they'd nearly faded. At the base of the oak lay a pile of objects, shoes, jackets, a broken cell phone, a crushed delivery bag with another company's logo on it. Ethan's blood ran cold. He stumbled back, gagging, when something rolled free from the pile, something pale, round, a skull. Children's laughter erupted all around him, shrill and joyous. Ethan's knees weakened, his chest heaving as nausea rose up his throat. His mind screamed to wake up, to snap out of this nightmare. But the cold in the air, the ache in his muscles, the sting of glass still in his arm, it was all too real. A whisper slithered through the clearing. "You're ours now." The woman's voice. Everywhere at once. He spun. She wasn't behind him, not in front, not anywhere he could see. But then he looked up, high in the branches of the oak. Her pale figure clung to the bark like a spider, her head tilted down, hair dangling, red eyes fixed on him. Ethan's heart stopped. She let go. She dropped from the branches, landing in silence on the forest floor. Ethan ran. He didn't know where. He didn't care. Just away from that tree, away from her, away from those laughing children. His vision blurred with tears and sweat. Roots snagged his feet. Branches tore at his clothes. Somewhere in the distance, faint but real, came a sound that didn't belong. Hera, siren, police. Hope flared, wild and desperate. He pushed harder, sprinting toward the sound. But the siren was faint, moving, fading, as if the forest itself bent it, twisting the direction, playing tricks on him. He screamed for help, voice breaking. "I'm here. Help me." His foot caught a root. He pitched forward, crashing hard into the dirt. Pain shot through his ankle as he scrambled up. He realized the forest had gone silent. No children, no woman, not even wind. And then a hand clamped down on his shoulder. Ethan's body went rigid. That hand on his shoulder was cold, too cold, like ice pressed against his skin, sinking bone deep. He didn't want to turn. He didn't want to see. But the grip tightened, and he couldn't stop himself. Slowly, trembling, Ethan twisted his head. Standing behind him was a child. A little boy no older than 8, his hair matted and wet, his skin gray like drowned flesh. His lips were parted in a faint smile, but his eyes were solid black, like holes punched through his skull. Ethan recoiled, shoving backward. "Get away from me." The boy's smile widened, stretching impossibly, splitting his cheeks until his face was more wound than mouth. And then he wasn't alone. One by one, they stepped from the trees. Small figures, surrounding Ethan in a tightening circle. Boys and girls, all dressed in torn pajamas, mud-stained dresses, shirts stiff with dried blood. Their heads tilted in unison, eyes black as night. The forest closed in. Ethan staggered back, his chest hitching with short, panicked gasps. "What do you want from me?" His voice cracked, desperate. The children answered together, a whisper that came from every mouth at once. "Stay." And then they lunged. Tiny hands clawed at him, fingers digging into his arms, his chest, his hair. Their nails sliced skin like glass, their weight dragging him to the dirt. Ethan screamed, thrashing, kicking wildly. One child sank its teeth into his forearm, gnawing with feral strength. Pain exploded, hot and sharp, tearing a raw cry from his throat. "No, get off me, please." He tore his arm free, flesh burning where teeth had pierced him, blood already running. He slammed his elbow into another child's face only for the head to snap completely backward, vertebrae cracking. But the child didn't fall. It just kept giggling, head lolling, eyes locked on him upside down. They were stronger than they looked. Too strong. Ethan flailed, his hand closing around a broken branch on the ground. He swung with every ounce of strength, cracking it against one child's skull. A hollow thud. The body flew backward, limp, then scrambled upright again, neck twisted. Giggling louder. They couldn't be killed. He staggered to his feet, heart slamming against his ribs. He bolted toward a gap in the circle, shoving one child aside, running blind through the trees. Behind him, the laughter rose into a chorus chasing, echoing, promising he wouldn't get far. Ethan's ankles screamed with pain from the earlier fall, each step like fire ripping through his leg. But he didn't stop. He COULDN, single quotes T. Up a headlight. Through the trees, faint but steady, a glow broke the darkness. Not headlights, not a siren, something softer. Flickering lanterns, dozens of them, swaying gently from branches, illuminating a path that led deeper into the woods. Ethan slowed, stumbling to a halt, his mind torn between terror and hope. The children's footsteps rustled. Behind him, they were close. Too close. With no choice, Ethan limped toward the light. The path wound deeper, lanterns guiding him like breadcrumbs. Their glow was warm, almost comforting, and for a brief moment, he let himself believe maybe this wasn't a trap. Maybe this was salvation, until he saw where the path ended. A cabin. Old, rotting, its roof sagging, its windows dark. The lanterns all converged here, hanging from its porch, its trees, its broken fence. The door stood ajar, yawning wide like a mouth waiting to swallow him. Ethan's stomach dropped. His body screamed at him to stop, to turn, to run anywhere else. But behind him, the children giggled, louder, closer. He stumbled up the steps, through the door, into the dark. Inside, the air was colder than outside. It smelled of damp wood, mildew, and something sweet too sweet. Rotting fruit. The door slammed shut behind him. Ethan whirled, pounding on it. No, let me out. Let me out. The door didn't budge. From the shadows deeper inside the cabin came the sound of movement. Slow, heavy, and then her voice. You shouldn't have come here. The woman stepped forward. Her face was clearer now. She was young, maybe late 30s, with long black hair falling over her shoulders. But her skin sagged like wax melted and reformed, her lips torn, her red eyes blazing in the gloom. Her dress hung in shreds, caked in mud and something darker. The children poured in through the cracks of the cabin, crawling through windows, slipping through holes in the walls. They gathered behind her, a swarm of pale faces, black eyes glittering. Ethan pressed himself against the door, trembling, blood dripping from his arm. Why me? His voice was barely a whisper. The woman tilted her head, smiling faintly. Because, you answered. She raised one hand. Ethan felt his body lift from the floor, choking as unseen fingers wrapped around his throat. His legs kicked helplessly, eyes bulging as he clawed at the invisible grip. The children laughed, clapping, cheering like it was a show just for them. The woman stepped closer, her face inches from his. He could smell her breath, sweet, rotten, unbearable. Now, she whispered, you stay, forever. His vision, blurred. Darkness crept in at the edges. His chest heaved once, twice, and then the cabin door burst open. Light flooded the room. Harsh, blinding. Voices shouted. Flashlights cut through the shadows. Police hands where we can see them. Ethan collapsed to the floor, gasping, sucking in air like it was fire. The grip vanished. The children screamed, their voices shrill with fury, before scattering into the walls like cockroaches. The woman hissed, her body dissolving into smoke that slithered upward, vanishing into the rafters. 2 officers rushed forward, grabbing Ethan by the arms. Jesus Christ, kid, what the hell happened to you? He couldn't answer. He could only cry, as they dragged him toward the door. One officer muttered to the other, I told you this place was no good. People been going missing out here for years. And as they stepped outside into the night, Ethan looked back, just once, and saw them. The woman, the children, standing in the broken windows of the cabin, watching, smiling. The cruiser's engine hummed steadily as it rolled down the cracked back road, its headlights slicing through the endless rows of black trees. Ethan sat in the back seat, cradling his bleeding arm with a strip of gauze one of the officers had wrapped around him. His body still trembled, the adrenaline refusing to leave. Every bump in the road made him flinch. Every shadow between the trees made him think they were still there, running alongside the car, waiting for him to blink. The officer in the driver's seat, Sergeant Miller, stocky, late 40s, kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. His partner, Officer Hughes, younger, maybe 30, rode shotgun, scribbling notes in a battered pad. Kid, Miller said finally, his voice gruff, I'm gonna need you to tell me again what happened back there. Ethan's throat was dry. His voice came out cracked. I told you, the kids, the woman, he cut himself off, shaking. His head, they weren't human. Hughes looked over his shoulder, eyebrow raised. Not human. They tried to kill me. Ethan snapped, his voice breaking. She lifted me off the floor without touching me. You saw Miller cleared, his throat, cutting him off. What we saw was you screaming in an abandoned shack, bleeding and half out of your mind. Ethan's chest tightened. No, you don't understand. They were there. You must have seen them. Neither officer answered. The silence was louder than denial. Ethan turned toward the window, fighting the sting in his eyes. Outside, the forest blurred past in streaks of black. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw them again, pale faces pressed against the tree trunks, grinning as the cruiser sped by. He shut his eyes tight, telling himself it wasn't real. Couldn't be real, but deep down, he knew. They were following. The cruiser rolled into the nearest small town, a scattering of street lamps, shuttered storefronts, and one dimly lit diner, glowing like an oasis in the dark. They pulled into the police station, a squat brick building that looked more like a converted library than anything official. Inside, the warmth of fluorescent lights was almost dizzying. The smell of stale coffee and paper filled the air. Miller led Ethan into a small interview room, its walls painted a sickly beige, a two-way mirror dominating one side. Hughes slid a styrofoam cup of water across the table. "Drink. You look like you're gonna pass out." Ethan obeyed, gulping it down, though the liquid did little to steady his shaking hands. Miller leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You said you were delivering pizza, right? From Tony's out on Route 7. "Yes." Ethan nodded. His voice was small, and this order came in after midnight. "Big one." "For pizzas," Ethan whispered. A man called, gave an address. When I got there, the house was empty, falling apart. But someone was waiting. Hughes tapped his pen against the pad, and this someone was a woman and a group of kids who disappeared when we arrived. They didn't disappear. Ethan's voice cracked, desperate. They hid. "They're not gone." There he stopped, his chest heaving. His words sounded insane, even to himself. The officers exchanged a look. Not pity, not belief, just the weary glance of men who had heard too many wild stories from drunks and drug addicts. Ethan's heart sank. "You don't believe me?" Miller sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Look, son, we're not saying you're lying. Something obviously scared the hell out of you, but ghosts." He shook his head. "I've been doing this job 23 years. You know how many ghost stories I've heard? Half the time it's squatters, druggies, or just some poor bastard losing it in the woods." Ethan stared at him, feeling the weight of those words pressed down like stones. It didn't matter what he said. No one would believe him. They kept him a few hours, bandaged his wounds properly, took his statement. At some point, Hughes left the room to make a collie-thon, overheard him mention Tony's Pizza, verifying Ethan's story about working there. Miller stepped out too, leaving Ethan alone in the stale beige room. Alone except he wasn't. He felt it before he saw it. The air turned cold, so sharp his breath came out in a thin fog. The fluorescent bulb above him flickered once, twice, before humming steady again. Ethan's pulse spiked. He turned slowly toward the mirror. His reflection stared back, pale, ragged, exhausted. But he wasn't alone in it. Behind him, just over his shoulder, stood a little girl, hair hanging limp, eyes black pits, lips twisted into a grin too wide for her face. Ethan spun around. Empty. The room was empty, but when he looked back at the mirror, she was still there, this time closer. Ethan screamed. The door burst open, Miller rushing in, Hughes behind him. "What the hell's going on?" Ethan pointed at the mirror, trembling, voice cracking. "She's there. She's right there." The officers turned, saw nothing but their own reflections. "Jesus Christ," Hughes muttered. "Kids losing it." Ethan slammed his fists against the table. "I'm not crazy. They're coming for me. They won't stop." Miller's jaw tightened, but his voice softened. "Listen, it's late. You're hurt. You've been through something. We'll put you up for the night. Keep an eye on you, but you need rest. Understand? Rest." The word felt like a death sentence, but Ethan was too drained to fight. He let them lead him out, down the hall, into a small holding room with a cot. The door shut with a soft click, the lock sliding into place. He lay down, staring at the ceiling, the events of the night swirling like a storm inside his skull. His eyelids grew heavy, despite his fear. His body demanded sleep, and just before he drifted off, he heard it, a whisper, right by his ear, forever. The first scream woke him. Ethan bolted upright on the cot, his heart hammering. The room was dark, darker than it should have been. The single bulb overhead was dead, leaving only thin slivers of moonlight leaking through the narrow window. Another scream ripped down the hallway. Not human, it was a shriek, high-pitched warbling, broken as if a child was both laughing and dying at the same time. Ethan stumbled off the cot, pressing against the cold steel door. "Hello, Miller. Hughes." No answer, only the echo of that shriek, bouncing through the station halls like something alive. Then footsteps. Fast, uneven, scampering. Too light to be the officers. Ethan's stomach knotted. He backed into the corner of the room, his hands shaking. His breath came short. Rapid. The door handle turned. Slow, deliberate. Ethan froze. His legs wouldn't move. The knob stopped halfway, then released with a metallic click. Silence. He waited, his heart pounding so loud he thought it would give him away. Then came the knock. 3 times. Knock. Knock. Childlike, playful. He wanted to scream, but his voice caught in his throat. Instead, he pressed his hands against his ears, as if that would make it stop. It didn't. The knock came again, louder this time. "Let me in." A tiny voice sang from the other side. "We're cold." Ethan's chest tightened. "Leave me alone," he whispered, barely audible. The voice giggled. Not one, but 2, then 3, all overlapping, weaving into one another. "We're cold. We're hungry. Let us in." Ethan's body refused to obey him. His knees buckled. He slid down the wall, clutching his chest, and then the screaming began again. This time it wasn't in the hallway. It was inside the walls. At the front desk, Sergeant Miller was pale with fury. He held the phone to his ear, the line dead, no dial tone, just static. "This damn storm," he muttered. But when he looked out the window, there was no storm. The night was still, too still. Hughes came rushing back from the holding cells. His face was flushed, his voice shaking. "It's happening again. That kid, he's right, Miller. Something's in here with us. Don't start with that crap." Miller slammed the receiver down. "There's an explanation. Always is." "Then explain this." Hughes pointed toward the ceiling lights. They flickered violently, buzzing like hornets, before plunging the entire station into darkness. Both men froze. The silence after was unbearable, and then the children's laughter drifted down the hall, back in the cell. Ethan pressed against the corner, trembling as he heard it too. That laughter, moving closer, closer. The bulb in the ceiling snapped on for half a second, flooding the room with blinding light, and in that brief flash, Ethan saw them, 3 children, standing in the opposite corner of the cell. Their skin pale and waxy, their clothes torn and stained, their eyes empty holes. The light blinked off again, plunging the room back into blackness. Ethan screamed, pounding at the door. "Help! Help!" The lock clicked, the door swung open. But it wasn't Miller, or Hughes. It was her, the woman, her, face hidden by stringy black hair, her body shrouded in the same tattered dress. She moved without sound, gliding into the room. Behind her, the children crawled on all fours, spines arching at impossible angles, their mouths stretched into hungry grins. Ethan scrambled backward until his back hit the wall. His voice cracked. Desperate. "Why me? What do you want?" The woman stopped, tilted her head, and whispered, "You brought them food. Now you're the meal." The lights throughout the station exploded, bulbs bursting one after another, showering glass and sparks. The building shook as doors slammed on their own. Miller and Hughes drew their guns, shouting into the darkness, their voices tight with fear. "Show yourself. "Who's there?" The laughter answered, this time everywhere at once, and down the hall. Ethan's scream tore through the night. The scream froze both officers in place. Sergeant Miller shoved past Hughes, his service weapon drawn, boots pounding against the linoleum floor. The station, usually cramped but familiar, felt like a labyrinth now. The hallways stretched longer than they should, shadows curling at the edges. "Ethan," Miller shouted. His voice echoed, not once, but twice. Each echo came back distorted, as if someone else was calling Ethan's name too. They reached the holding cells. The door to Ethan's cell hung wide open. The cot was overturned, the thin mattress shredded. On the far wall, deep scratches had been carved into the concrete. Not letters, not words, just claw marks, frantic and violent, as if something had tried to crawl out from the inside. Ethan was gone. Miller's voice cracked. He holstered his gun long enough to rub his temples. "This kid is playing us. He's screwing with us." But Hughes didn't answer. He was staring at the mirror on the wall, the small rectangular mirror used by officers to keep an eye on the cell, except it didn't reflect them. In the glass, 3 children stood shoulder to shoulder, smiling with blackened gums, eyes like rotted milk. "Jesus Christ," Hughes whispered, backing away. "Do you see that?" Before Miller could respond, the mirror spider-webbed with cracks. The children's hands, thin, pale, impossibly long, pressed against the other side of the glass. Pushing the mirror shattered outward. Fragments rained across the floor, but the children didn't vanish. They stepped through. Miller fired. The gunshot roared down the hall, deafening. One of the children staggered back, but instead of blood, smoke poured from the hole in its chest. The smoke swirled and closed the wound, leaving the child grinning wider than before. "Bullets don't work," Hughes screamed, fumbling with his radio. This isn't possible." The radio hissed, alive with static. And in that static came the woman's voice. "You locked him away, but you cannot lock us away." The lights overhead buzzed, then blew out one by one, plunging the station into pitch black. Miller grabbed Hughes by the shoulder. "Move to the armory." They sprinted down the corridor, their flashlights strobing wildly, as if struggling to stay lit. The walls seemed to pulse around them, breathing. Closing in, behind them came the sound of bare feet slapping against tile. Dozens of feet, not just 3 children anymore. More, many more. In the armory, Miller slammed the door shut and shoved a steel filing cabinet in front of it. Hughes panted, his face slick with sweat. "They're not human, Miller." His voice cracked. "We're dead. We're already dead." Miller forced himself to stay steady, yanking a shotgun off the rack. "No, we fight." He handed Hughes another weapon, his jaw set. "I don't care what they are. They bleed smoke. Fine. We'll blow them apart until there's nothing left." A whisper crawled through the room, chilling the air. "Smoke is only the beginning." The overhead fluorescent light flickered back on only. It wasn't light. The glow was sickly green, like swamp water. The shadows grew longer, stretching into twisted shapes. And at the far end of the room, Ethan stood. His clothes were torn, his face pale, his eyes wide and glassy. "Ethan," Hughes whispered, lowering his weapon. But Ethan didn't answer. His lips moved soundlessly, over and over, as if repeating something in prayer. Miller stepped forward, cautious. "Kid, what did they do to you?" Ethan finally looked up. His lips stopped moving, and in a voice that wasn't his high, hollow, layered with dozens of others, he spoke. "They're hungry." The armory door buckled, slammed from the other side by dozens of fists. The steel filing cabinet groaned as it scraped against the floor. Hughes raised his gun again. "Miller, we're not making it out of here, are we?" Miller chambered around, glaring at Ethan's lifeless eyes. "We're sure as hell gonna try." The cabinet tipped. The door cracked open, and the children poured in. The door exploded inward. Dozens of small bodies poured through, pale arms reaching, fingers hooked like claws. Their mouths gaped open, but no sound came, just the hiss of wind, like air escaping. A coffin? Light them up, Miller roared. The shotgun boomed, the blast echoing off the armory walls. A child's head snapped back, its body dissolving into smoke that clung to the ceiling like black mold. Hughes fired too, his hands trembling, but his bullets only slowed them. For every child that fell apart, two more seemed to crawl from the darkness, their eyes shining like dead stars. The filing cabinet toppled aside with a clang. More shadows pressed through the doorway, stretching, splitting, forming shapes too tall, too jagged to belong to children. Hughes shouted, voice cracking. It's not just them, it's her. And then she appeared. The woman. Her form drifted into the room like smoke pouring under a doorframe. She was taller than Miller remembered, her skin corpse gray, her black hair writhing as if underwater. Her eyes burned like embers in a dying fire, and her smile, thin, impossibly wide, showed rows of jagged teeth that looked more like glass shards than bone. You've taken what belongs to me, she whispered, though her voice filled every corner of the armory. Now, I'll take what belongs to you. Ethan, still standing like a puppet in the corner, tilted his head, his lips stretching into the same glass-toothed grin. Hughes faltered. Jesus Christ. He's one of them now. Miller grabbed his shoulder. Focus. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of rot. The temperature dropped so fast, frost began to spread across the metal racks. Miller's breath puffed white as he racked the shotgun again. Stay behind me, he barked. The children lunged. Miller fired, point blank, tearing through three at once. They exploded into smoke and shrieks, but more climbed over the wreckage. Hughes swung his rifle like a bat, caving in a child's skull. The body collapsed, twitching, but its broken jaw still laughed. The laughter spread, doughing, overlapping, until it drowned out the gunfire. Hughes screamed, clutching his ears. Make it stop. The lights overhead shattered, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the faint green glow of the woman's eyes illuminated the chaos. Miller yanked Hughes toward the back wall, where an emergency exit loomed. He slammed the bar. Nothing. The door wouldn't budge. The woman's voice slithered through the dark. You don't leave. Not until we've eaten. A child leaped onto Hughes, clawing at his throat. Hughes fired blindly, the bullet grazing his own shoulder as the child dissolved in smoke. Miller shoved him upright, snarling through gritted teeth. Come on. There's another way. He kicked open a supply locker, revealing a narrow maintenance hatch. It was barely wide enough for one man to crawl through. Beyond it, pitch black. Hughes looked at it, then at the horde closing in. That's suicide. Miller didn't hesitate. He shoved Hughes toward it. Better than staying here. The woman moved closer now, her face inches from Miller's. He could smell earth, wet and rancid, as if she'd been buried for years. You'll never leave. She'll never leave. She'll, whispered, her cold breath scraping across his skin. Miller rammed the shotgun barrel into her chest and pulled the trigger. The blast sent her form scattering like smoke in a hurricane. The children shrieked, clutching their heads as if in pain. Go, Miller bellowed. Hughes crawled into the hatch, his boots kicking wildly. Miller followed, dragging the shotgun behind him as the sound of claws scraped the metal walls. They crawled through darkness. The passage seemed endless, twisting in directions that made no sense. Their flashlights sputtered, beams flickering, sometimes showing metal walls, sometimes showing wood, old, rotted wood, like the walls of a forgotten cellar. Hughes whispered, his voice trembling. This isn't the station anymore. Miller grunted. Shut up. Keep moving. But deep down, he knew Hughes was right. This passage wasn't leading them outside. It was leading them deeper in. When they finally dropped out of the hatch, they landed hard on wooden planks. Dust filled their lungs. They weren't in the station at all. They were in a house, an old house. Its walls rotted, wallpaper peeling, the floorboards groaning under their weight. Miller's blood ran cold. He knew this place. It was the house from Ethan's delivery. The house in the woods. From upstairs. The laughter started again. Children's voices. And beneath it, the woman's. Soft, sweet, venomous. Welcome home. The floor groaned beneath their boots. Miller gripped the shotgun, sweat mixing with dust on his skin. Hughes staggered beside him, his uniform torn and bloodied. Both men froze, staring up the staircase that rose into shadows. The laughter continued, high-pitched, childlike, endless. Hughes whispered, voice cracking. "We're not in the station anymore, are we?" Miller's jaw clenched. He knew the truth but didn't want to say it. They weren't in their world anymore. They were in hers. The house was alive. The wallpaper pulsed like skin. The air smelled of dirt and copper blood and graves. A cold wind blew down the staircase, carrying whispers too faint to understand. Miller raised the shotgun, pointing it at the stairs. "Come down here, you bitch." The laughter stopped. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, footsteps, deliberate, heavy, wrong. Something was coming down. First came the children. They crawled into view, pale and bruised, eyes pure white, limbs bending at impossible angles. Some walked on all fours like animals. Some dragged broken legs but never slowed. Behind them, Ethan descended. His delivery uniform was shredded. Pizza boxers still clutched in his hands. His face was slack, pale, his mouth split into a grotesque smile. "Delivery's here," he rasped, his voice not his own. Miller fired. The blast tore through Ethan's chest, sending his body crashing backward into the shadows. But instead of falling, Ethan's form pulled apart, unraveling into black smoke that poured across the ceiling like a storm cloud. The children shrieked. The house itself groaned, beams rattling, glass shattering, and then she came. The woman floated down the stairs, her body stretched unnaturally tall, her fingers long as knives, her face twisting and twisting until it no longer resembled anything human. Her mouth unhinged like a serpent's, rows of glass teeth flashing in the dim light. "You killed us," she hissed, her voice shaking the walls. "Now, you will never leave." Miller fired again once, twice shells blasting chunks of her into smoke. But she only grew taller, wider, filling the stairwell like a shadow made flesh. The children screamed, their voices merging into hers, until the sound rattled the cop's bones. Hughes dropped his rifle, covering his ears. "We can't fight this, Miller. We can't." Miller grabbed him, shaking hard. "Then we burn it down." They stumbled into the kitchen, ripping drawers open, searching. Miller found old propane tank near the stove, rusted but intact. He yanked it loose, dragging it across the floor. Hughes stared, wide-eyed. "That'll kill us too." Miller jammed the shotgun barrel against the valve, eyes locked on Hughes. "Then at least we don't go alone." The woman's voice oozed into the room, low and cruel. "You think fire hurts us. We are fire. We are hunger. We are forever." The children spilled into the kitchen, crawling across the counters, under the table, their pale hands reaching. Hughes screamed, opening fire, but for every one he hit, another came. The woman swept through the doorway, her face nearly scraping the ceiling now. Her mouth opened wider, wider too wide, ready to swallow them whole. Miller roared, slamming the shotgun trigger. The propane tank exploded. The world turned white. When the flames cleared, the house stood, charred, broken, but standing ash drifted like snow in the still night. The forest around it was silent, as if nothing had ever happened. Inside, the rooms were blackened husks. The kitchen was a pit of smoldering ruin. Miller's body lay crumpled, burned beyond recognition, the shotgun still clutched in skeletal hands. Hughes was nowhere to be found, only a bloodstain leading up the stairs. And from the second floor, the laughter began again, soft, childlike, endless. Weeks later, the property was investigated by county police. The official report said, the fire was caused by faulty propane storage. Both officers were listed as killed in the explosion. The house was condemned, but locals swore they still saw lights flickering in the windows at night, swore they heard children playing in the yard long after midnight, swore they saw a pizza delivery boy, helmet on, bag slung over his shoulder, standing at the gate, smiling with eyes too white to be human. The last delivery was never made, and it never will be, because once you take food to the dead, you belong to them forever.